HOA tried removing my flag. I'm a decorated general. Section 1. I never thought the day would come when someone would try to take away the flag that I fought for, bled for, and nearly died for. That flag is not just a piece of cloth to me. It carries the weight of every soldier I served with, every friend I buried, and every sacrifice made on battlefields far away from home. So, when the Homeowners Association told me to remove my flag, they weren't just asking me to take down fabric. They were asking me to erase my story, my honor, and my very identity. I still remember the first letter I received from the HOA. It looked so official, like it carried some authority I was supposed to bow down to. But as I opened it, my heart sank. Remove the flag immediately. It read, just like that. Cold, empty, no respect, no understanding. It was as if my decades of service meant nothing to them. My hands shook as I held that letter. The flag outside my porch waved proudly in the wind, its colors bright under the morning sun. To me, that flag was alive. It breathed with the memories of fallen brothers and sisters. And here I was, standing in my own home, reading a demand that felt like an insult to everything I had endured. I couldn't believe it. Who in their right mind would dare to strip a veteran, a decorated general, of the right to fly the very flag he fought to protect? The thought burned inside me like fire. But instead of rushing into anger, I sat down quietly. I stared at the folded corner of that letter, and I thought about every friend who never made it home. I thought about the flag that covered their coffins. And I knew right then, this battle wasn't about fabric. It was about honor. The next day, I decided to confront the HOA directly. I walked into their office, shoulders straight, medals gleaming faintly on my jacket. I wanted them to see the man they were challenging, not just a homeowner they thought they could push around. The woman at the desk smiled politely, but her eyes shifted when she saw the seriousness on my face. I asked for the president of the HOA. When he walked out, he had that smug look. You know the type. The kind of person who believes rules are above respect. The kind who hides power in paperwork. He shook my hand without looking me in the eye. And before I could even speak, he started quoting HOA regulations about uniformity and aesthetic standards. I let him finish. Then I leaned forward and said, "That flag you're talking about is the reason you even have the freedom to form an HOA. Men and women fought, bled, and died for those colors. And I'll be damned if you think a regulation will make me take it down." For the first time, he looked shaken, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. "Rules are rules," he said. His voice was sharp, but I could hear the nervousness in it. I walked out of that office that day with my head high. I knew this wasn't over. If they thought I was going to fold, they didn't know who they were dealing with. I didn't survive battlefields, bombs, and bullets just to surrender to a homeowners committee. Days went by, and the letters kept coming, each one harsher than the last. Threats of fines, threats of legal action, threats to place a lien on my home. The weight of the pressure grew heavier, but with every letter, my resolve grew stronger, because this was no longer just about me. This was about every veteran, every soldier, every family that had ever lost someone to war. If I took my flag down, I would be betraying them. One night, I sat outside on my porch. The flag rustled softly in the night wind. I thought back to the battlefield, to the day we lost half our unit. The air smelled of gunpowder. The sky was filled with smoke. I had held a dying soldier in my arms as he whispered his last words. "Don't let them forget us." Those words echoed in my ears as I looked at the flag. And I whispered back into the darkness, "They won't. Not while I'm alive." The HOA wanted to make this about rules, but to me, it was about promises. A promise to never forget. A promise to honor. A promise to fight one last time. Not with weapons, but with truth, courage, and the voice of a man who refused to be silenced. I started documenting everything. Every letter, every threat, every interaction. I wasn't going to let them twist the story. I knew one day I would need to tell the world what they had tried to do. I knew others would need to see how far they were willing to go. But here's the thing. Word spreads fast in the community. Soon, neighbors started noticing the battle I was fighting. Some came to me quietly, whispering support, telling me they admired my stand. Others were too scared, too tied down by fear of the HOA's power. But I could see it in their eyes. They wanted me to win. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. This wasn't just my fight anymore. This was a chance to show people that they didn't have to bow down to unreasonable demands, that they could stand tall too. But the HOA wasn't done with me. Not even close. The next morning, I found a bright orange notice taped to my door. My blood boiled the second I read it. Final warning, it said. The HOA was giving me 7 days to remove my flag, or they would take further action. Further action? Against me? Against the very man who once stood in foreign lands to defend this country? I crumpled that paper in my hand and threw it on the ground. My jaw tightened. My heart pounded. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was intimidation. And I knew from years in service, when someone tries to intimidate you, you have two choices. You either bow your head or you rise taller. I chose to rise. That evening, I polished my medals. I laid them out on my table, each one a symbol of blood, sweat, and sacrifice. My silver star, my purple heart, my distinguished service medal. Each told a story. Each was earned in places where rules weren't written on paper, but carved into flesh and bone. And now, here I was, facing a group of people who thought they could erase it all with fines and notices. As I held the Purple Heart in my hand, memories rushed back. The explosion, the ringing in my ears, the blood pouring down my arm as I dragged another soldier to safety. The flag had been there that day, waving above the base, through fire, through chaos, through pain. And somehow, it gave me strength to keep moving. I clenched the metal in my fist. "You will not take this flag from me," I whispered into the quiet room. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday night. I decided to go, not as a homeowner, not as a man being threatened, but as a soldier who had one more battle to fight. When I walked into that room, heads turned, some people looked away quickly. Others nodded with respect. The HOA board sat at the front, papers stacked high, eyes filled with judgment. The president cleared his throat and started the meeting like it was just another routine evening. But I didn't let him get far. I stood up, my voice cutting through the room. "Before you move on to budget reports and landscaping rules, I need to address something. You've been threatening me for flying the American flag, and I need everyone here to hear my answer." The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. I served this country for over 3 decades. I led men into battles we weren't sure we'd survive. I've seen soldiers drape their last breath under the very flag you now want me to take down. That flag is not decoration. That flag is not an eyesore. That flag is the soul of this nation. And if you think I'll remove it because of some so-called regulation, you don't understand what it means to sacrifice. For a moment, no one spoke. Then whispers filled the room. Some neighbors nodded. Some clapped softly. Others just stared at the board in disbelief. The HOA president shifted uncomfortably. "We're not against the flag," he said quickly. "We just have to maintain uniformity. There are designated places for flags." I cut him off. "Uniformity? Do you think the battlefield was uniform? Do you think the graves of fallen heroes line up perfectly in neat little rows because of rules? No, they are lined with grief, sacrifice, and courage. And every one of those graves carries that same flag you now disrespect." The silence was louder this time. My words had landed. That night, I walked out of the meeting knowing I had shaken their confidence. But I also knew this wasn't over. People like that don't back down easily. They hide behind paperwork, behind threats, behind lawyers. And I was ready for it. In the days that followed, I started receiving support from people I didn't even know. Strangers left notes on my porch thanking me for standing tall. Veterans from nearby neighborhoods drove by, saluted my flag, and honked in solidarity. One man even knocked on my door, tears in his eyes, and said, "My father never came home. Thank you for keeping his memory alive." Those words hit me hard. It reminded me why I couldn't bend. This fight wasn't just mine anymore. It was for every person who ever lost someone to war. It was for every child who grew up without a parent because they laid their life down for freedom. But of course, the HOA didn't stop. They mailed me a letter saying they were hiring attorneys. They wanted to drag me to court over my flag. That was the moment I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. I knew federal law was on my side. The Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005 made it illegal for HOAs to ban the flag. They could try all they wanted, but the law was clear, and I was ready to remind them of it. But I also knew this was bigger than just quoting laws. This was about standing strong, showing courage, and refusing to let bullies rewrite the rules of respect. And as I prepared for the next round, I looked at that flag on my porch. Its colors glowed in the morning light, and I whispered, "I've fought for you before. I'll fight for you again." Because when the HOA tried to take down my flag, they didn't just challenge me. They challenged the spirit of every soldier who ever lived. And that's a battle they will never win.